girl.
Yeah, that's good. Well, sometimes,
Yeah.
You ready?
Anytime you're ready.
Okay.
Okay, it's on. Hello, this is Daniel French, and welcome to Human Mind Body. Today we're at the Hollywood Temple, and we're visiting with...
Swami Brahmavidyananda. Brahmavidyananda.
Now, can you go into what that means, what the name means?
Yes, I'd like to. Brahma, it's Sanskrit, of course, and all the Swamis in this particular order, in most Indian orders, are assigned with Sanskrit names. So this particular name, my particular name, they all end in Ananda in our order, and I think in many of the orders in Indian tradition. Ananda means bliss. So Brahma Vidya Ananda means, Vidya means knowledge, and Brahma means the expansive, and Ananda means joy or bliss. So he whose joy or his bliss is in, whose knowledge of that expansive brings bliss, or whose bliss is in the knowledge of the expansive. That expansive spiritual reality. The reality that's everywhere and omnipresent.
Well, that's what we'll talk about today.
Yeah, well.
For people that don't know, the viewing audience, what yoga is, or what Vedanta is, or the Vedas, could you just maybe give a brief explanation? Maybe some what that represents?
Yes, love to. The Vedanta, that's what this particular group is called, the Vedanta Society. And we're traditionally monks of the Ramakrishna Math in India. But here in this country, the whole thing is going through transition. So the the Vedanta societies were started by Swami Brahmavidyananda. And he started these, actually when he came to this country by, I guess it was 1896, he founded the Vedanta societies. And ever since then they've been growing, and we have one now in Chicago, we have one in St. Louis, we have several in New York, we have one up in Sacramento, in San Francisco, and we also have one up in Portland and Seattle. And as well as down in San Diego, extensions of this particular society in Hollywood, and one up in Santa Barbara. So we're spread out. But the Vedanta is a beautiful concept. I'll give you my interpretation of the Vedanta. My interpretation of the Vedanta, of course, is Veda, Anta. It's just two words, two Sanskrit words, root words. And Veda means knowledge, knowingness, insight, understanding, wisdom. And Anta means completion, ending. So the whole idea of the Vedanta society is, as I see it, different people have different interpretations. But to me, this is perhaps the most satisfying and the most meaningful for the Western world, where Swamiji founded all these Vedanta societies, is a society, a place where people gather. We just gather in order to acknowledge an end knowing, an intuitive knowing, a spiritual knowing. So Veda is the knowledge, and Anta is the culminating. So it's a society that acknowledges there's a culmination to knowledge. And all of the religions of the world are expressions of this evolution in knowing and its culmination. So in a very broad sense, this is a very inclusive thing. It's just a place where people could come, whether we're Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, to acknowledge and exercise our lives in such a way as to bring out this intuitive knowing. And that is, I hope I summed it up.
Oh, no, it's very good.
Yeah.
Very good. So it would not be in conflict with this, what other traditions call the sacred, or God, or Allah, or Ishvara?
Oh, no, not at all. It's very open to all these traditions. In fact, Vivekananda's great ambition was to set up a system wherein all people from any tradition can come here. It's, as I like to say, very much like Joseph Campbell, who was a student of the Vedanta, And he worked out of New York with Swami Brahmavidyananda long time ago, before he went on to do other things, but he was doing it then. But the Vedanta is open to all traditions, and we are free as Vedantins to draw from the whole resource of spiritual images and ideas in all the traditions. So there's an enormous flexibility to this. So the Vedanta isn't any one set of images and things. We can draw from the whole panoply of human experiences and the history of all traditions, religious traditions, and draw from them, because the aim isn't dogma or the emphasis on one image or anything like that. It's the opening of consciousness, the maturing of consciousness. And however we can do that, whatever we use to do that is of no consequence to the Vedantin. That's important for that individual. So if you're Christian, you may draw from the crucifix. If you're Jewish, you may draw from the various symbols in Judaism. And all the traditions, they have their own ways. So the Vedanta doesn't inhibit any of that.
How about the four yogas, the four paths, or...
Yeah, you're getting to all the things very quickly, which is good, a nice summary.
Well, just as a summary, and then we can always expand.
Yeah.
For people that are watching, most don't even understand what yoga means, to unite, to bring together.
Yeah.
So...
You sum it beautifully up. Well, some years ago, I was working on this because we live with this idea of yoga all the time. And in the West today, we traditionally think of yoga as hatha yoga. In other words, working with the body, which is a good form of getting control over the mind as well. Not only building up our strength, physical strength, but also getting control over the mind. But yoga, some years ago, I've been wrestling with it more and more, but there came a point where I saw that really all it is, as you say, is to unite. But it's to bring our minds in accord with this ultimate reality. It's everywhere. God is everywhere, omnipresent. So if God is omnipresent and everywhere, all we're being asked to do through these yogas is bring our mind in accord with this omnipresent reality, with the divine that's everywhere. It's in our own hearts, it's our own essence. So the yogas, these four yogas that Swamiji set up, are very generic definitions, and they can be found in Jung, his four personality aspects. But one is reason, we have will, we have our emotions, and we have our moments of concentration. Now, if you look at your human mind, you're a combination of those four things. Right now, while you're listening to me, you're focusing, your will is right here present, your reasoning faculties are here, and there's an emotional content to your listening. And equally so with me. Right at this moment, I'm using these four faculties. I'm focusing, I'm reasoning, I'm willing, I'm using my will, and there is an emotional content to what I'm saying. So these four things, cognitive, conative, affective, and there's the one more is focusing, are the characteristics of the mind. Now, ordinarily those things are used to achieve goals in the world. We will, we reason, we focus, and we emote in order to accomplish things in the world. Well, Vivekananda set it up, Swami Brahmavidyananda set it up, so that we could exercise these four quadrants of consciousness, or these characteristics of consciousness, to open it up, so so that we can intuit this higher reality. The problem is our minds are constricted, and we're reactive to the world. And so all the religions tell us there's a larger reality. So these yogas merely say, use whatever you want in the world in terms of symbols and images. And then use your reasoning faculty, your emotions, and your will, and your focus to open your consciousness up. So you can see how elegant and simple, and how there's no hidden agenda in this particular model. There's no hidden agenda. So personalities really come secondary in the Vedanta. And the real important thing is how to open consciousness to intuit the divine. And then the symbols that you use are unique to you. And you should be free to draw from whatever symbols awaken. If it's Native American, a lot of people are now into Native American religions. If it's Native American, good. Draw from the symbols. Go to medicine wheels, or use medicine wheels in order to help in open consciousness. So the Vedanta, this end-knowing society, doesn't have any hidden agendas. It just says the truth is here, and how do we access it and bring it in our lives and empower ourselves? Because one of the great messages of Vivekananda was strength. What religion really gives us down the road when we embody it more and more is strength. We all want to be strong, mature, in control of our lives. We all want that. And the Vedanta says that's really the fundamental characteristic of spirituality, strength, and not weakness. Another point the Vedanta makes is we're not sinners inherently. We're inherently good, divine. And so all this nonsense that rises up into consciousness and all of these little things that we've inherited from past lives, we just have to see beyond it, let go of it. That's all. And we're in evolution now. We're speeding up the process of evolution.
Sounds good.
It sounds good, doesn't it?
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Can we equate the 4 paths to what you said with reason and just showing the Sanskrit terms like the bhakti, the
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh no.
Yeah, but yeah, 4 yogas, for instance, bhakti yoga is through the motions. In other words, how to exercise our motions in a way so as to open up consciousness. That's bhakti yoga. Jnana yoga is through reason. How to reason in such a way so as to unite or open consciousness to this intuitively to this higher reality. Raja yoga is how to focus. It's meditation and the techniques of meditation, and how through meditation to open out into this ultimate reality. And then karma yoga is through action. How in through the world, through our daily lives, how are we to act in such a way as to empower ourselves, free ourselves up from our constricted mind, and come into the world with strength and power and success. Because big people, successful people, are always bigger than their situation. Whether they're lovers of God, whether they're meditators, whether they're very reasonable or active in the world. The great secret of all success in the world is bigness of mind. You can take any person in any field and their unique character is there's something big about them. So we're trying to open, through all these things, we're trying to open consciousness, access that potential that's within, and bring it into our lives so that we're more successful and we become the Abraham Lincolns and the, God knows, you can use any great soul to see how they stand out in history. Because great souls, it's very interesting, Vivekananda was saying this and I just read it. He said, when you read the works of a great soul, you wonder what was so unusual about this person. This is not very interesting. You read Kierkegaard or read some other person, and it's not all that interesting. I mean, in terms of greatness. But Vivekananda said at the time that, for instance, Martin Luther, there were some beautiful ideas there, no doubt. But what was great was the person. And afterwards, the legacy, we can't often see the greatness there. But it was the great, sometimes it does endure through the literature. So we come, so often though in the literature we don't see why was this person particularly great. In their presence, people were stunned and amazed and they were awestruck and they were empowered by this great person. So it's that legacy that the Vedanta is trying to encourage. Strength, strength, strength. The innate goodness of the individual.
Anything you want to talk about in particular?
We've gotten some of the fundamentals. We've gotten the fundamentals of the Vedanta, this end intuitive society that deals with this end intuitive knowing. And I think just going over this is very important, just for people to understand the elegance and the simplicity of it. That we're always catching, young people catch this intuitive knowing all the time in the world. Why is it that young kids are so ecstatic about that? And we as adults, we love to be around them. And you know, and the parents love to be with their kids and go out places and take them to the baseball games, movies, because they're participating in that ecstasy, that innocence, that openness that we had as children as well. Well, what kids are doing is they're participating in that intuitive experience. They're accessing the divine spontaneously. But the trouble is, we lose it more and more as we age. We get out.
How do you tap back into that? Say people find themselves in a rut and life happens to them, whatever, bankruptcy, divorce, just working 60 hours a week, whatever, suffering, you know, happens everywhere.
Yeah,
But we can help alleviate that just by doing massage, talking, teaching, yoga.
that's right.
How do we, I don't want to say no or know that we perceive this the sacred or the divine or the spontaneity, but how do we know, or what are ways to bring about that freedom again and shed away all the unnecessary
Yeah,
ills that this culture
ills and problems we have as individuals. We have to, that's what yoga is. It's, you know, our mind is causal. And as kids get older and older, they're told, you know, in order to succeed, you have to go out in the world and do things, and that's all right. But as we do, we get more and more shut down and hooked into things. And so what these yogas do, or what any religion tells us to do, basically they're all telling us, is to be more in the present moment. And they provide, all religions and traditions provide tools by which we can start to let go of our addictive, closed down states of consciousness, you know, and we're not only addicted to everything, all of us, we all suffer from that, but that's what brings us our pain. So there's nothing wrong with, Vedanta says, with working in the world and having, but it's because we're addicted to things that we suffer. You know, the kid, they're spontaneous, they're open, and it's that spontaneity that we want to learn. I know one guy down at the postal office. I love him. It's George. George is from South America. He's a beautiful man. But he says, I love life. Well, what does George do every day? George is in the present moment. He doesn't even know he's a yogi. But he loves everybody. And he comes to everybody with an open heart. And he says, you know, life is actually very beautiful. And he loves his wife. And he's very respectful of his wife. She's older than him. And she's not perfect. He says, I love her more than any beautiful woman. He says, why? Because she's got a heart. She's got a heart. And so George is a hero. Whenever I go there, I see this yogi. And he's just working hard, but he's loving with everybody. He knows everybody's name. Now that's yoga. That's spontaneity. This guy doesn't know that he's just doing it. You see, he's a karma yogi. He hasn't shut down. He doesn't believe that in order to succeed in the world, you need more money, you need more of this, you need more of that. He doesn't care about that.
No external validation.
No external validation. He's his own man. And we see that in any person who succeeds. More and more, they stand in their